Right, another week starting to look like a house. Um, so we've gone through the basic steps of doing the massing model, adding in a roof, and then we added in doors and windows. This is really conceptually one of the easier parts because it kind of is what it is. And now we're going to start getting into something a little more fun, a little more detail oriented. Starting adding in trims and brackets and all that kind of stuff. Um, and again, I think I'll probably say this every week. As much of a linear process as I'm laying this whole thing out, uh, there's always the give and take, back and forth kind of idea. So it's just a matter of I'm trying to give you guys tools in your toolbox of how the whole process works, and then from there, you apply it to the way you work kind of idea. So as you're going, if you ever got any questions, just let me know. So let's just jump into it. So let's look at our CAD file. And here, again, it's a pretty basic house, but this has everything we really need to talk about. We have some brackets up here. We have trims around the garage doors, trims around the windows, a little fancier trim down here. It's pretty much going to be even more basic as we go around, but this really talks about everything that we really need to talk about. So there's the very basic aspects. Actually, I'm going to go back to the CAD. It's really nice when you have these details already drawn. Most times, especially when we're in design mode, we don't. Not a big deal. That's kind of the design process, is you're working through the kit of parts and what those details really are. So it's kind of irrelevant, if you have them to begin with or not. It's just from a modeling perspective, definitely easier if you have them. So since I do, I'm going to use them. And before you import them, make sure you have them at the right scale. Sometimes people draw them to scale, then change the scale in paper space, or they draw in model space, but just change the scale of this. As you can see, this is supposed to be 8 inches, and if I dimension it, it's 2'8", which means that it's 4 times bigger, which makes sense since this is 1 inch equals a foot. So we know that this detail is 4 times bigger than what it needs to be. So I've actually already scaled these all down here. And so I'm going to grab my profiles. I'm just going to bring them all together at once. And again, if you don't have them in CAD already, they're easy enough to draw. But it's just going to make it easier since we already have them. And so just like before, I W blocked them out. And then inside of my model, we're just going to go File, Import. And this becomes like a routine thing for me. This is how I do almost everything. W block out in AutoCAD, bring it in SketchUp. I find it's much easier to draw in AutoCAD, line drawings. I don't know how you guys feel, but for me it's much easier to draw in AutoCAD. In fact, even using like Illustrator and all those sorts of things, I wish they had the drawing capabilities that AutoCAD has, because they're much easier to draw, and really it's the same idea. Alright, so I brought this in, and let me just pull these off to the side so we can kind of see them. So we brought these in, and obviously this is just an exact, bringing all of these in right here, no different. And as you remember, bringing any block in, it becomes a component in SketchUp. So you can see I can edit this component. I really don't want this thing to be a component. In fact, I'm going to want every individual piece anyway. So I'm really just going to explode this thing, and then I can group each one of these individually. A plugin that I've used throughout this process that I don't think I've actually talked about is a pretty cool one. It's actually called Make Face. Let me see if I can find it. So part of this is I want you guys to see all the plugins that I use. It's one of those things you just don't realize how many you use until you start trying to tell people about them. I'm pretty sure it's this one, this S4U Make Face. Yeah, this one right here, S4U make face, SketchUp for you. And what's great is it's a pretty simple thing. Like this, for example, you know, these are just lines that came in. If I want to make it a face, I would have to just trace a line and it makes a face, easy enough. But this plugin, I can select all this stuff and I have a hotkey of just the plus sign. If I hit the plus sign, you can see it auto fills these in. It did not fill these in because there's some sort of issue with them. And it goes back to the discussion we've always had about bringing in curves, which I usually where the issue lies, although this one doesn't look like it. I'm just going to draw some lines to see if I can figure out where the disconnect is happening. There it is. If you guys ever run into this, if you zoom in too far and see how it disappears, see if I can do it a little slower so you see it. You know, I'm zooming in, and then you can even see right across here how it's disappeared away from the camera view. And if I zoom in another click, it's just more and more. If I keep zooming in, the whole thing disappears because essentially my camera is moving past where my model is. Another great little thing that is a great workaround for this is using field of view. If you guys ever changed the field of view, I believe it's under. It's funny how many of these things I have no idea where they are because I don't find them this way. I believe it's under view and then or camera. That's where it would be. Camera field of view. I have mine set to F12. Just an easy way to do it for me. And if you notice down here on the bottom right, where you always do like your measurements and inputting all that kind of stuff, if I hit my F12, you'll see it changes to field of view. And SketchUp default is 35 degrees. And that seems to work really well for exterior shots. When we get into interiors, we'll talk more about that because I actually find that 60 degrees works much better for interior shots because you get a much wider view. And I actually did some research on it. Most cameras, and specifically iPhones, their field of view is approximately 60 degrees of view. So the images you're looking at on an iPhone is 60 degrees field of view. So it'll be much more accustomed to what you would see in taking a picture with a phone. And obviously, if any of you are gone into photography, you know, you can change the field of view and all that sort of stuff. But so if I change my field of view, I actually hit 0, but the lowest you can go is 1 degree field of view, and it just auto changes it to 1 degree. And that's essentially making it a two-dimensional drawing, or as close to a two-dimensional drawing as it possibly can. And so you'll see that if I zoom out, there's how distorted my whole model looks. There's very little projections going on, but that allows me to zoom into this thing extremely close. You see how it's not disappearing on me? And, you know, I can even get close enough that I can see where this is not connected. I don't know if you can see that microscopically. Very, very small. And then I can close it up and it's working. So it wasn't the intention on doing this to show you about this, but it's a great thing. I think it's something that we run into all the time in working on these. So that's just one way that I use to fix it. And so that was one way to try and fix this, going through and finding the microscopic hole, you know, or knowing that it's more than likely a joint somewhere. So you can see that I'm going to try and essentially extend these lines to kind of force a crossing, which is still not finding it. Yeah, in all honesty, like something like this, when it starts to get to be this difficult, I usually just redraw it. I mean, it's usually easy enough. But again, you know, part of the teaching is understanding how to troubleshoot. So just part of the process of what we're doing. And that was interesting too. You can see when I deleted this, that it was 2 different lines. So just something funky going on. And in all honesty, this was an old CAD file, and things were definitely not as clean back in the day. So I'm going to change my view back to 35 degrees. And then similarly, we're just going to fix this one, and we'll do this one even a little quicker. One of the things I usually do is grab an arc and I move it, and if it's not connected, you'll see that it's not connected. Like, see how the top right of this is not connected to a line? Like, it looks like it's connected right there, but if I move this, then I know that that's where my issue is. So I'm actually just going to delete this line and redraw it and be done. Alright, so that's all my profiles, and then each one of these I'm going to turn into a group. And so, I can go through, select everything, Control G, turn it into a group. At least Control G is my hotkey for this. Another great plugin, which I do not think I've talked about previously, is from, I believe, Chris Fulmer, who does a ton of these. It's, I believe it's called Make Group to Loose to Group, or Group from Loose, or something to that effect. This one right here, CLF Loose to Group. And what's great is it'll find, I can select all of these at once. And again, I have a hotkey of Shift G, but I believe it's under Extensions, Chris Fulmer Tools, and then Loose to Group is where it goes when it installs. And if I select all of these and I hit Shift FG, it turns each one of these into a group on its own. So it's just another one of those things that's very quick to allow me to turn things into a group. So I now have a collection of basically all the trims that I need to build my model. And I'm going to group all of these together because, again, as I talked about, I just like having essentially like elements as a group, the way I like having roofs as a group. So now I can get in here and just work on the roof if I want to, the walls as a group, the windows as a group, etc., etc. It's just become my habit, and it's really just something you need to just get comfortable with of how you want to work. So the first one I want to talk about would be adding heads and sills to windows. This one is pretty basic. Let me just make sure I'm grabbing the right one. So the taller one is for the head, shorter one is for the sill. We do have this one, which is going to be more of a fancier sill used in certain applications. In fact, let's look real quick. So the front elevation, I have it right here on this front window by the entry, and I'm going to assume it's going to happen. I would have assumed wrong. Like, I would have assumed since this is at the front entry, it would have had it as well. And honestly, it probably should, but that's kind of irrelevant right now. So I was going to use these basic ones to start. And there's really going to be several paths that we can take on doing on adding these in, and I'm going to go through them all, and it's just going to be a matter of what's going to be best for the project you're working on, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So here, this is a little over 2 inches. I can just push-pull this to be the length I need for my window, but again, not to forget that there is an extension of 2 inches beyond the window. Make sure the head is the same. So all then we would need to do, is just pull this out 2 inches and pull this one out 2 inches. And now this is just about as basic as I can get. So I'm going to pull this out, or move this 2 inches, and then we can just pull this out, 3'6", which is 2 inches bigger than the window. And there you go. There's, head and sill for a window. Again, just about as basic as you can possibly get. But as always, I'm trying to think ahead as to what's going to happen, what's going to make life easier, and how can I make my model better with doing a little bit more work up front, but in the end game have a much better model that's much easier to work with in the end. And so for me, one of the most important things is essentially continuity of materials. So if I were to grab, I'm just going to grab a color just so we can be very blatantly obvious on this. If I paint my head here, I'm going to paint it this crazy orange color. Now, in theory, this trim should go all the way back, and the top of this window should be painted the same color. There should be a continuity of material that goes back to the window. If you ever look at properly done, windows, you'll see that. So what I do actually in my trims is I'm going to pull this down 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle inside this trim and pull this back 4 inches. And 4 inches only because it's going to be half the length of the window depth. It's an 8-inch window. I don't need this to go into the interior, so it's only going halfway. So what you're left with is this basic trim outline with this material that slides back, and now you get this, which looks much nicer in what the material is supposed to be inside of windows. So there's nothing worse, and you see it all the time in what we call builder architecture, even, where they would, let me just do this basic real quick. They'll offset this, say this stucco band around a window, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is you see this window painted like this, and then the house color, because they paint the whole house first, and then they come back and paint the trims. Let me hide this. And you get this effect, and it's not right. Like this, they don't take the time to come back in and paint this, and so we actually try to specify that should be done on jobs. Whenever you put I've even seen it where there's stone heads that they don't wrap the stone back inside, and it's just a stucco head on top of the window, and it just looks ridiculous to me. So that's why, even taking this very basic level of trims, that's what I try to do. Again, so let me pull this one up. 1/2 inch, and just draw this rectangle. And I do 1/2 inch just because it seems to be a nice number and not cause too much of a flickering issue because it's too thin or whatever. Let me delete this just to get it out of here. So that's the way that I like to do trims. Now, the second portion to this is, do you add the trims this way where they're not connected to the window, or do you save yourself time and I'm going to cut this, Control X to cut it, go inside my window block. So now I'm editing the actual component itself, and I'm going to paste it in place. And what this does is, as you can see, I now just eliminated having to add trims to 2 other windows because I have the same window block. This is where there's a path that veers that you have to choose what's best for the specific model you're working on. And what I'm getting at is, let's say that we're looking at this elevation, we're going to assume that these 3 windows, since this is right next to the front door, we're going to call these front entry windows that get the nicer trim. If I wanted to put this nicer trim here, then I can no longer put it here. Do it that method, because I have these on the back that are getting the not so nice trim. So even though I have the same exact window, they're going to get different trim applications. So that's where you have to understand, doing it or not. So yes, I can say, you know what, I want to make this window a different component, but now that allows me to add a different trim in. But now if I edit that window, the other two windows that should be edited with it don't. And so it's just that game. You just have to mentally play with yourself of, what's the best method for me to be able to quickly add trims to everything. Does that make sense? Like the different ways of adding it. So, so for now, we're just going to kind of stick with doing it within the window block, because for the most part of this house, it's going to work. We'll see. Let me see how this one goes in. So now this one's going to be slightly different because it's not the same. The profile changes. It has a miter joint that's going to come back in, and so this one's going to be done slightly different. So I'm going to put it on the edge, and again, I'm going to move it up 5 inches or half an inch, and then I'm going to draw in that additional trim piece that I talked about that allows the trim to go back. And so that's going to be my trim profile. And I'm actually going to, I'm on the wall, but I'm actually going to move this back. It doesn't really matter. I was going to call it 12 inches. And then pull this up and trace the length of my window and then go back 12 inches. You'll see why the 12 inches doesn't matter. It's just the length that kind of does. I'm going to run my clean command, which we've talked about many times, and then Control R, or Shift R for me to change the faces. And this, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't specify what command I used. Sorry, thank you. So, very basically, I have the outline. That's what these lines drawing were, the path in which I'm going to use the follow me command. And then I have F set as my follow me. So I already have the path selected, then select my outline, and that gives me that. Now I have these lines in here that I don't want, that the follow me command created. If I select everything by triple clicking, my clean command, if we've talked about before, but just quickly show it, it's this clean up here, and you can do all kinds of settings of how to clean things. And I have, you can barely see it, but I have tilde as my hotkey for clean last settings. And so now once I select everything, I can just run my clean command, and you can see all those lines went away, and then Shift R is my reverse faces. And then we had pulled this back 12 inches, which is much further than we needed, but I did it just to kind of give myself room. And so now you can see I can select just the outside edges. So you see that just this profile and this profile are selected, which allows me to pull everything up. And I'm going to pull everything up to this face here. And then run my clean command again. It gets rid of those lines. And I just need, this thing didn't go in the right place. This is just the kind of the top edge of the sill that allows my material to run back. And so now you can see there's a nice trim with a miter detail, pretty quickly and easily done. And so this one, I'm going to Control X and then add it to this window group or window component. I hit Shift H, which is my command for hide rest of model, and really what I was checking was, do I have any other windows that is the same component? As you can see, if I click this one here, you see these other two are shown up. So I know that I'm editing these other two as well, which was okay at the time. And I just want to make sure that I wasn't editing a different one. So to me, that's just a quick way of figuring it out. So I think this is the only window in this model that's going to get that nice trim, but again, this isn't the greatest architectural project, but it's just a very easy one to show lots of different things. And so you can see if I'm actually going to group the head and sill together, and you'll see why in a second. And I'm going to hit Control C and I'm going to copy it. So I have the group of the head and sill copied. So now I can go to another window. I'm going to hit Control V, which pastes it. Now I'm hitting X-ray mode, and if you see where I'm grabbing, which is this bottom left corner, and showing you on the back without an X-ray, it's right here, because this corner is the same as this corner right here. I'm going to turn my frame back on. So you can see where I'm connecting. Like this bottom left corner, that's what this corner is here, if that makes sense. So now I can grab this, and I'm going to move this here. And the next thing is, obviously I'm much wider than my previous one, and I can just do a quick measurement. I personally like using the line command to measure. I know there's the tape measure. I actually find that to be more cumbersome than what I need. So I use the line command and pretend like I'm going to draw a line. So I start at the point like I'm drawing a line, and I just hover over where I'm going to stop. And if you look on the bottom right, it's telling me what the length is. So it's telling me it's a foot. So I need to shrink this by a foot. And then same thing vertically. I'm going to pretend like I'm going to draw a line. And you can see that it's a foot too tall. And so now if I Shift H, hide rest of model, and the reason why I grouped the head and sill together is now when I go into here, the rest of the model is completely gone. I can now focus on just editing these two things. And since these are both blocks, or groups, excuse me, there's nothing wrong with me exploding this and editing it. But since we have our special new plugin, the stretch command, I'm going to hit Control A, which is what I have. I can highlight both of them, move it over 12 inches, highlight this whole thing, 12 inches, and there's that window. So to show it a little faster, just to show how quickly this whole process can go, I just copied it, come into here, editing this window. Luckily, this one's the same width, but I know that this one needs to come down 12 inches. There's those windows done. Let's come into here, Control Paste, moving it by that corner, do a quick measurement. 12 inches. The height is actually off by, I know it's off by an inch, so I move it up an inch. And Control A for stretch. And that one's in. So again, I'm going through these fairly quickly, so if you have any questions while I'm doing it, I'm hoping this is all making sense. A lot of it's just going to come from doing it, and or finding your own method that works for you for speed. Again, it's just trying to share all the things that I've come across and stuff that I've done that allows me to work what I think to be very quickly. So this goes up 25 inches. And I don't know if you guys work in inches or in feet. I find inches to be easier because I don't have to, it's easier for me to use inches on the keypad versus having to go all the way over to the keyboard itself to add the foot sign. Does that make sense? So instead of having to hit 3 apostrophe for 3 feet, just typing 36 is a lot easier for me. Now, and it gets to a certain point where, you know, it's easier just to type in, you know, say 16 feet versus trying to do the math of 16 times 12, you know, or whatever it is. So I got one more. Looks like I got this window, and then I have a sliding glass door to work on, and then a couple other quick things to talk about that I think are pretty cool. And so now the sliding glass door, and again, I'm going to copy in that both that head and sill. Although in this case, I'm going to explode it because I don't need the sill, I just need the head for a door. And just do a quick measurement, 9'2". And actually, I think the front door and the garage actually has this overall trim around it, which, let me just do a quick measurement. Yeah, it's 6 inches. And so I can grab, I don't really need to grab this, but I'll just draw it myself. So I'm going to come into my garage door block and just draw my profile real quick. And then just like I did the follow me for the other sill, this time I'm going to do a follow me command, but it's going around the door and window. And I want this to drop down 4 inches. And so now you can see I can grab the sides, the top, and the other side. I do a quick follow me, and there we go. And just like before, I made it so that if I paint this, let's grab this one here. You see how the inside edges now get painted just because that whole trim got painted. That's why I add that little kind of leg in, or whatever you want to call it. I just think it just, again, really makes a model a lot nicer and cleaner in the long run. Get the material off. Yeah, and then you're just left with these round ones. And maybe we'll do on the round ones, just like this front door has this same kind of vertical surround band. And this model actually doesn't have any windows up here. I added them in just for our discussions last time. But to leave them in and to talk about how to do this trim, I think I've talked about this plugin previously. Actually, this actually be a little tricky. Let me see here. If you seeing, so if you can see what I'm doing, I'm grabbing the whole essentially masonry opening to this. I'm gonna do a quick copy, and then I'm Control Shift V to paste, and then Control G to group it. I don't know why that got pulled. So, because what I'm looking to do is I actually want this outside frame, this outside edge, I want to be able to offset that 6 inches to build my surround. But as you know, you cannot offset an arc. Like if I were to try and select all of this and try to use the offset command, you can see it's saying it's not coplanar basically. You know, if I wanted to, I could offset this arc because it's coplanar, but I just can't grab these non-coplanar arcs. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to reverse faces. And if you ever, I think I've talked about it before, but if you ever use this joint push-pull, this allows me to essentially push-pull in multiple directions. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to pull this up 6 inches. Didn't cool. I don't know if you see what happened. It didn't quite do what I wanted. If I turn hidden edges on, you can see that this line went straight instead of continuing that curve. But that's okay because it's getting me partly where I want to be. And so what I can do is I'm actually going to grab this rim of the wall, Control C, come back in here, and I'm going to turn this into a group, and then Control V, pasting this in. And anybody can guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to use my solid commands, grab these two, and say whatever's in the middle. This tells me it's not a solid, so let me run my solid clean. And there's some, there we go. sometimes like these crazy solids need just a little help to be fixed. Yeah, it's the one thing I don't like is working on turrets, because things are never as clean as what you want them to be. And in fact, I think it's going to be even more difficult to do what I was thinking. So honestly, the easier way is I'm going to explode this, and still going to use this piece, but instead of be able to use the solid commands, I'm just going to right click and go intersect faces with selection, which now gives me essentially that line I'm looking for. Did not give it to me down there. That's all right. So as you can see, there's never, as much as I want to give you a process, sometimes things just are not as that easy. But there's, and that's the kind of the fun thing of always coming up with new ways of doing things, is you can always problem solve. And so I don't know if you saw, I've actually just completely changed directions of how I want to do this. And all that work was simply because I wanted this curved face with this hole cut out. And what that will now allow me to do, if I paste that in place, I can use my joint push pull and pull this out 2 inches. And there's my trim around the window. That was much easier than the way I was going about it, but that's all right. We eventually got there. And so now, again, the great thing, I can control X this, come in here and plop it in there, and there's my trim around the windows on a tower. So there's definitely a much easier way to do it than what I was originally doing. And let me see. So so I know that was kind of a long, boring version, so let me see if I can do it a little bit of a quicker way. So I'm going to do it again around this door and kind of show you what I did. I'm essentially going to basically recreate this tower. I'm going to turn it into a group. Let me hide it, and I'm going to come in here and grab the door. Whoops. All right, now I can come in here and I can pull this. So I'm going to do 2 things here. I actually want to inset this 1/2 inch, which is going to give me that 1/2 inch inset that I was talking about before. And I'm going to copy this, just this outer face, and using my solid tools, I'm going to subtract this out from this. So that gives me my initial profile, and then Control V to paste this. And then I'm going to offset this 6 inches. And this is going to give me the lines that I really need, because now I want to do it interior union. Now this is again what I'm really after right here, this outer face. And using my joint push pull, coming out 2 inches. There you go. So I hope that was a little bit of an easier way of explaining it. But you know, doing basically doing trims around round towers can be a little bit more difficult. But in my mind, if you properly think about the steps of doing it, which I did not do initially, but just work through the idea and the tools that you have, you can eventually come up with something that'll work well, which I think we just did. I'm going to pull this down just so that my trim is hitting down here the way it would. All right, so that's basic door and window trims. Hopefully I didn't confuse you guys too much on that last part, but you know, it just shows that not everything always goes as smoothly as you want, and just problem solving will work out. So any questions on door and window trims before we get into like brackets and crown molding? All right, and so brackets, let me make sure I'm getting my right bracket, which is, yeah, because this is a different trim detail. Yeah, so this one up here. So now I'm actually going to right click and I want to say make this a component, because it's a bracket, and you know, if we change one, we want to be able to change them all. And I want to see that this is 6 inches wide. And so for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter, but I like to move the insertion point to be right at the origin. So if you can see, my axes are starting right at the top left. So now I'll go left to right 3 inches. So now it's a 6 inch wide bracket to the exact profile. And that's all I just did. And so now the fun part of copying this around. I always start right on a corner, and what I want to see is, yeah, what this is showing me is that just check as to where your brackets start. A lot of times we'll do it, say, 6 inches off the corner. Other times we'll do it right on the wall. It's just something to be aware of. And so since we're 6 inches off, I'm going to go over 6 inches, and then I'm going to write or copy, move and copy by the bottom right this time, and go all the way over to the wall. Now, if you look down here in my distance, this is really key. Before I let go, you see that it's 2'10", and so I'll go ahead and click. But if you remember, I want to be 6 inches off the wall. So doing quick math, it's 20'4", which will give me 6 inches off the wall. So I just manually key that in. You can see 20'4" down there. And again, before I get out of the command, we typically do, say, 2 foot spacing on these brackets, or, you know, again, just knowing what your brackets are for the project. You can do quick math. This is 20'4", and if I want a spacing of approximately 2 feet, you know that there's 10 spaces. So if I type in 10 divide, I just added in all those brackets. And this shows me that I obviously have an issue, which this, I did not follow this because this one does not have trims across the top, and for obvious reason. So I just need to come in here and edit this real quick and delete that top trim out. And there's my bracket. So that's the basic idea of how to quickly add brackets around everything. And the other piece to it, so I'm going to rotate this 190, move it over 68 or 6 inches. And so really the first thing that I do is, instead of doing this, you know, wall by wall, I'll do a corner like this and copy it by, you know, some common point, and then find that common point wherever I can in the house. This one's actually slightly different, but I'm going to go ahead and put it here and then rotate it. And you can see I can now copy that one up here. Then similarly, I'm going to move this one, or copy this one here and rotate it 90 degrees. And this one I'm just going to do a actual copy over, since I knew I already had that one corner. And this one, since I have this you know, raked roof, I'm just going to copy this over 24 inches, and then 24 inches 2x, because I want 2 of them, and I see that's a little off. So I'm going to come back in and type in 22, which now spaces these 22 inches apart versus 24. And I see that that works. So I know this one I can do the same thing, 22, 2x. Now going back to these where I set up, oh, I want to finish copying some of these around. And so really it's a lot like painting, where doing the edge work is the most time consuming, but once you have the edges, you're kind of good to go. And so wherever I can, I'm just trying to add in the corners that I need. And so now here, you know, this one I know, say 24 by 4x, and that looks like it'll work. This one here going to the left, I don't have a specific ending point, so I can just do 24 and then do however many I think. And then this one coming across, I'm going to copy this one to here, and you see at the bottom right, again, looking at my distance, if I lay it over top, it's 43'4", so that's you know, divided by 2 is approximately 22. So obviously I'm rounding up to 44 feet, so it's a little less than 2 feet. So it's a judgment call of, do I do 21 or 22? I'll just do 22 divide, and that adds them all in. And since I copied one on top of this, I just delete it since there was a double. And so now I can just kind of go through and do all of these really quick. That's 38'6", so that's what, 19. And so now you can see it's very quickly, you can go around and populate all your brackets. This one did not have a corner. Uh, 4310, so 44, so 22 divide. Oops. That was 4310. I actually want that to be 43'4", and then there we go. So that's 15, so 8 divide. You know, as you can see, a lot of this stuff just kind of gets repetitive, but it's still pretty easy and very quick, and you can populate a lot of stuff very quickly. And it's just one of those things that you kind of get used to. Let's see what we're doing. Okay. And then the last piece of it is doing a round tower, which we've done before, sort of. Just making sure I get it kind of on an axis there. So I have one, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm actually going to copy it and do 360 degrees. So I basically just copied it onto itself, but now I can come back and say, let's do 10 divide. I'd be like, nope, that's too far apart. I need more, so 20 divide. And 20 divide looks pretty good. So you see how quickly I just populated a turret with brackets around the whole thing. And again, I'm just going to delete the one that copied back on top of itself. And maybe just to clean things up, even though we faked these windows in, I'm going to drop them down, say 6 inches, just so that they are not hitting my trims. This rake roof has another different kind of trim that goes on the edges. It's the same process. I'm not going to bore you with that. We're going to kind of get into some quick other things. If you guys have ever dealt with raked roofs and doing sort of rafter tails, let me just kind of fake one out here real quick. So let's see, we have this roof down here like this. All right. And say we're doing some sort of roof over the garage or whatever it is. I'm going to take one of these brackets just as a profile idea. I'm going to make it unique so I'm not messing with anything else. And so I'm going to put it at the edge of this roof, and really, you know, this thing's going to get rotated up. So if you guys have ever dealt, again, with rafters, you know, basically you're dealing with this. Just project it all the way back to the wall. Why aren't you snapping? That's weird. Love it when things don't work the way you want them to. Alright, we'll do this the old-fashioned way. I see why it's not working. So, you know, there's my rafter, and then we can copy that rafter around. Again, very similarly, but not really the point because it's the exact same thing as what we just talked about. What I really want to get into is, let's say this roof, let me edit this roof, for whatever reason, say we're doing something that's like this. Man, something's off on this model. I hate when that happens. There we go. So where the wasn't actually intersecting the plane. There's something that was off just a little bit. So we'll just do this. So what I'm getting at is, you know, say that we have this roof is cut like this, and I want these long rafters here, and I want shorter rafters here. Now, there's the obvious is we can select these two, the two end ones on either side, you know, right click and say make unique, and, you know, stretch these up to here and be done with it. But now let's say, you know, we're in design process and someone's like, hey, you know, we want to manipulate what this thing looks like, you know, let's maybe do something like this just to make it look different. Well, now I got to come back and do the exact same thing to this one. So the way around that, let me undo all this. So these should all be the same. Okay, so now all of these rafters currently are the same, but I want shorter ones. What I'm actually going to do is come in here and I'm going to shorten this rafter. I'm going to copy this edge just for my own reference, get rid of that. I'm going to turn this whole thing into a group and then turn this into a component. And then paste and place that piece I copied. And then simply turn this into a group. Now I want to get rid of this line, so I'm just going to come in here and say hide that face and line, come in here and hide this face and line. So now they all look identical, and they currently are. If I hit my hidden lines, you see that I have my hidden lines here, but you can't see them while I'm modeling. Now what's great is if I make these four unique like I did last time, and then again, using my, let's say my stretch command, pulling this up to, you know, to here, it effectively does the exact same thing I did with more work. But now, if I need to come in here and edit this profile, you see that I can edit this profile, and all my rafters change, even though these are shorter. Does that make sense what I did and why I did it? So it may not be something that's worth doing, you know, right off the bat if you're doing Rafter Tails. Maybe you just make your Rafter Tail component. But if you get to the point where you realize you need to make multiple length rafter tails, then that's when you come back in and implement this kind of concept before you make those other rafter tails unique. That you're doing some sort of point where you're making the profile of the rafter tail a component that can then just be connected to everything else. So if you ever need to change the style of the rafter tail, it's just a pretty easy thing to do across the board, even against multiple length rafters. Make sense? All right. And then the next piece is we can do like a chair rail. I mean, this one's a pretty basic around this round turret here. This is, oops, I meant to mention it, just a 1x2. So similar to what we did with the brackets, actually. Let's see, this is a 1x2. Went the wrong way, but I'm just going to rotate it, turn this into a group. And I know, the center of this window is on one of the green or the red axes, and I'm going to pull it out to the face of the wall. Let's see here, maybe we'll put it 36 inches, something like that. So to say that's where we want it to go. I don't know, maybe a little higher. Now I just need a line for which this thing needs to follow. So if I grab my round turret again, I can do this and then use my follow me command, and there's the trim that's around the turret. Similar, the exact same process, but say this is crown molding instead of brackets. So I'm just quickly selecting the face of this to use as my profile. I'm going to hide these brackets and then put this profile back in and say this was a crown molding that we're dealing with. I'm going to hide my roof because now I can come in here and say I need this crown molding and I want it to go around this whole roof. I just select where I want it to go, and then using the follow me command, I now have, my crown molding. Just that easy. Makes sense? I mean, crown is definitely much easier than brackets. Brackets, are a little tedious trying to populate the whole thing, but crown molding is pretty easy. Now there's another way to do crown molding that I'll show you, although it's another plugin that I use. It's a paid one, and I eventually want to try and get it onto the laptop so that we have at least one paid version for everybody to access. And ideally, I'd love to get it on everybody's machine, and I'm going to work on that. But this same profile, I'm just going to paste it over here, and I think I could just select this face, and this is called Profile Builder 2. And if you guys haven't ever heard of it or ever used it, it's a really cool, powerful app that I want to add this profile into the plugin. So I just use this button here that says New Profile, and I can call it the crown molding 1, whatever. And it imports it into this, and I say I want the insertion point to be the top left, so you can see this red dot, and that's where, if I draw a profile line, that's what it's going to follow. So now I can come into this crown molding block. I'm going to actually delete all. I'm going to hide my roof, and I'm going to delete that crown molding I created. And what I want now is I actually just want to draw some profiles of where this would go. Essentially the same way that you use follow me. I'm creating the follow me lines that I need, and so all I'm drawing right now are just these follow me lines. In fact, I want one more. I'm just gonna copy this and get back into here. So you can see I have essentially outlines to on my roof. So if I select this outline, which is that upper roof, and I select build along path, I click it and it builds it. It built it in reverse, which I can just click a key and reverses it. So there's my crown molding. I can select each one of these, and to me this is much easier. I'm building it around this circle. It's going to take a second. So if you remember my circle, we did extremely high segments, 184 actually. So you can see that this is a pretty detailed and very smooth, which is nice. And so now I can just build these paths along the whole thing. So that easy, I just did crown molding around the whole house. And what's great about using this is, I'm going to come back here. This is that one that we used to create the crown molding in the profile. I'm going to select this and say I'm going to scale this down by 2, really elongate this thing. All right, so this is very different now. And maybe we'll even do, just to make it really funky so we can really recognize the difference, we'll do something like that. Say this is the crown molding we now want to use. I'm going to add this in and call it crown molding 2. And I'm going to come back to all the crown moldings that we've built. And I can use this box here, which is edit member properties. And say I want to switch out the profile. Actually, didn't change my profile. Hang on. I did not do it right. I'm going to make a copy of this. Maybe it didn't load it in properly. I was going to call it profile 2. There we go. And top left. Perfect. Now, when I mess with my profiles here, I can say I want to change the profile and apply. And just that easy, I can change all these profiles. That one's going to take a while because it has high segments, but so it almost becomes like dynamic modeling, parametric modeling, if you guys have ever gotten into that. It's not actually like it. It is parametric modeling, which is really nice because you can change things on the fly much easier. And so you can see just like that how we were able to change all those profiles. So it's pretty cool, and you can actually get super elaborate with this plugin. Hang on, I'm going to undo all that. Actually, not okay. Undoing some, erase it later. What's really cool is you can actually build assemblies, and we're going to end pretty soon on this because I know it's getting a little late. So I have a straight line, to a curve. I can. This is just doing profiles, but you can do an assembly of several profiles. And so this is another part of the same plugin, and I can add in different assemblies. So I can add in, say this glass railing, select this, and same thing where I can say build along path. It just built this whole railing along a path. Obviously, it doesn't do very well on curves with this particular railing. Let me see if I can get a nicer one. Like this one would work really well on a curve. So just this quick, you can build a railing like that. And so all you're doing is specifying all these different components, and we can talk about learning this plugin later and building these assemblies. But to me, that's pretty impressive. I mean, there's some cool things out there where like doing something like you can do different wall assemblies if you really wanted to get into super technical kind of drawings. It's still thinking for a second. So if you see in that one stroke, let me just dissect this real quick for you because I think this is pretty impressive. I have this, which is a gypboard layer on the inside of a wall. I'm going to hide this. I have all my furring strips that were added. I have a beam that was added to the top of the wall. inside the beam, let me hide the beam, you see that there's a rebar running throughout the wall. And then on the other side is a stucco layer and a masonry wall, all with materials applied that quickly. It's a pretty cool, very powerful plugin that can be used. You know, and there's ways you can do foundations and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's pretty much it on, you know, exterior trims. You know that you can get as detailed as you want, or as you know, simple as you need to be. There's not a lot of this that goes on for modern houses, but shoot, you know, doing something like this house here, you know, you can see there's just a lot of detailing that goes in on this kind of house, and so that's really what's going to take the longer time is doing a house like that. But it's all the same process. Yeah. So any questions on all that? All right. So your guys' projects coming along? Yeah, I get it. It's 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 tough, but and the only reason why I keep telling you guys to do your own project is it's just how you learn. It's just doing it because you may or may not have a project that you can dedicate to working on, and so, you know, having a project that you are able to put time into to practice these things, just so it doesn't get forgotten or lost. Because we can talk about this stuff all day long, but until you actually sit there and do them, you know, that's when the learning really happens. You know, from here, oh, what I did not talk about, just to mention before you guys go, similar to before, the way I have all my window blocks and everything, I have this that I keep trying to update whenever I can. This is basically my elevation window details. And in fact, I'll show you. You know, this is the folder. This actually, the location's on my server, but it's the same one that's on yours. That this one here, the elevation wall details, it's what all these are. So I have a lot of these trims kind of pre-built, and you can see already has that sill and head lip already built into it for materials. So all you need to do is copy these in and just stretch the width of what these are. And if you're interested or need them, I actually have a lot of these interior details built of, you know, say vertical blinds pulled up or down, or curtains, you know, horizontal blinds. You know, if you just need to, especially if you're doing renderings and want to have your windows not feel so soulless, you know, it kind of gives us a little bit of oomph behind them. There's a lot of that stuff kind of modeled in here as well as some other wall details. Yeah, so that's about it. I'm trying to remember what we're doing next week. Probably materials or something like that. Let me just see so we can talk about it. But let's see here. We finished. Yeah, so the next would be roofing details. You know, so it would be taking, you know, this house, and yeah, we can simply add in, say, you know, like a shake or a concrete tile detail. But, you know, what if we have an S-tile roof or a metal roof or something like that? You know, there's some quick, easy ways to be able to 3D model that stuff and to make your roofs look really nice. So we're going to get into basically 3D roofs next class. All right. You got any questions, just let me know. All right.